I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Geno TV and Channel 99. Our guest is John Stanton. John, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are here because you are a filmmaker and you have just produced a film called The Last Bay Scallop.
Yes.
And I would love to hear what sort of inspired you to do this film.
Well, about a year ago, when Peter Boyce's eelgrass study came out, I think like a lot of people, I was shocked to hear that in over 10 years, 50% of the eelgrass had left. And I went to Tara Riley and I asked her, in layman's terms, what does that mean? And she said, well, it means there's a potential that in another 10 years, we won't have a commercial scalloping industry.
There is such a thing called commercial extinction. What that means is that you may still have a scallop population, but it's so small that you can't harvest it commercially. Oh yes, you can find a few bay scallops, but there aren't enough to have a fishery. We're the only places that don't have populations that are commercially extinct.
We're at that, really what I think is the brink here.
The eelgrass just gets choked out. It can't grow.
We don't want to wait until there is no eelgrass before we start thinking about why there's no eelgrass.
Went with my uncle when I was just a little kid, maybe 8, 10 years old.
Growing up in Nantucket in the 60s, everyone who scalloped, my chore was to open scallops at the end of the day.
I thought two things. I thought I could make a film that captured a part of local culture while it was still going on, and make a film that hopefully became part of the solution. How is still sort of blowing around in the wind, how that will happen, but that was the idea.
And what you did was gather a group of interested scallopers and other scientists and town officials and so forth to talk about.
Well, I did what I always do, which is sort of go around with a notebook jammed in my back pocket and talk to everybody I can think of, in the subject matter. Scientists, politicians, fishermen, and then we put a crew together and we went out and I decided that Kyle Sherlin and Bruce. I'm blanking on his name. Bruce Cowan,
right?
Would be two great guys to sort of be our main characters, and they were great. They allowed us to get on their boat, put a cameraman on their boat with them, to give us some interviews, let us hang around the shanty, and they became the core of the film.
They have a shanty together, right?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, because they don't always fish together. I think Bruce, if he fishes alone, takes his catch over there, and they both open them together.
Right.
And to me, Kyle's like the iconic commercial fisherman here. He comes from that fishing background. His father fished, George's Bank. His son, Jim, fishes off of Alaska now.
And scallops when he's home.
Yeah, scallops with the dad when he's home. In fact, when you watch the film, the underwater shots of eelgrass, Jim took those. He was out with his father a couple of years ago. He was home for Christmas, and they went out scalloping, and he attached an old GoPro to a dredge and tossed it overboard just to see what would happen. And, so much of making a movie is kismet, luck,
That shot of the one scallop hanging onto the eelgrass is classic.
Well, that's a still picture, and we just put a move. Well, I was able to put a move on it in post, so make it look a little bit like it has some movement.
Right, it worked.
Yes, and it shows. The thing that people who've been around here their whole life have said to me, well, my wife, for instance, that they didn't really understand the importance of eelgrass in the whole equation. I think Bruce was right where he says in the film, people see the price go up and down in the paper. They buy they get a plate of scallops. They say, "Isn't this the greatest?" But they don't really know much about it.
Right.
And I think that little thing and Peter Boyce's explanation of it is really so important.
And the fact, which didn't come through in the film and didn't necessarily have to, was the fact that scallops are different from other mollusks in many respects. They live a much shorter period of time. They move around of their own accord. You did, I think, did explain that in the movie.
Yeah.
And so that their whole being really is different from a clam or a conch or a mussel or something, and which essentially stay. Conchs move, I guess, but mussels and clams all stay pretty much buried in the same spot.
Well, I mean, a lot of that is the reason for the connection between someone like Tara and the fisherman, the scientist and the fisherman. And you don't see that anywhere. You go up to Gloucester, you won't see that. You see sort of contention between the scientist and the fisherman. But
There's been that here too.
it has in the past. I mean, I really think that the town made a smart decision by not giving Tara any enforcement duties.
Right.
So she's actually just, her job is just almost totally as an advocate to the fishery. And it's like she says, you can read all you want, any study you want about the the bottom of the harbor, but only people who really know are the fishermen. And so that connection, where they move, where they best can be put for seed, that's really important. And it's part of the thing that makes me a little optimistic about here as opposed to other places.
Now, in terms of rolling out the film, you showed it first where?
Well, we had it at the Annapolis Film Festival, a film festival that I had my last film in, and they just called and said, are you working on anything now? And I told them about this, and they took a look at it in a rough cut form and accepted it, and we went down there about a month ago.
It actually fits in the Chesapeake Bay very well.
Exactly. We had 2 screenings. We had pretty good crowds at both, but the reason people came was because of the connection to the Chesapeake. The Chesapeake Bay, for people who don't know, has a water quality issue. It has for years. Oysters were really affected adversely. Their runoff comes mostly from agriculture.
Right.
So they have it's a bigger area too, so they have a bigger problem. But people came and people wanted to talk about it afterwards. I love when I go off island with a film and the people that you meet at a screening and get Q&A afterwards, they talk about the issue, but they don't talk about it through the eyes of Nantucket. So that was a good example of that. And then just last weekend we had 2 sold-out shows at the Starlight, and good conversation afterwards. That was, the whole idea of making any documentary, I think. There's an old saying that a documentary film doesn't really start until the house lights come back up and people start talking about it. And so that was, and now we're waiting until the film festival. This is going to be part of the Nantucket Film Festival, and so we'll sort of keep it under wraps until then.
And then the distribution plan after that is still being worked on. But in terms of the reception that the film has gotten, was there a difference in the reaction between the people in Annapolis and the people here who saw it?
Well, I mean, I think it's, Nantucket Bay at 6 o'clock in the morning is a beautiful place on a good day. There's a sort of cinematic feel to the film that we wanted to have part of it. I really don't like documentaries that just tell you a story like the little film strips we saw in junior high. So there's that, and people related to that. There's a certain veritas that both Bruce and Kyle have that people relate to that.
And of course, having Rob Benchley involved, who was the photographer for a book called Scallop Season a few years ago.
He's a great narrator. He's the first thing he's ever narrated, as far as I know. He did a great. He has a great voice. I think maybe people here saw that, but people in Maryland didn't.
Right.
But they relate to the issue. The same in Maryland as in Nantucket. People came up to me afterwards and wanted to talk about the solutions and things that they're working on. A woman in Annapolis, who wrote the fertilizer regulations for the state of Maryland, gave me your card. And said, give it to anyone up there you think, could have them call me.
Right.
So I like those connections if we can make them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And after the film festival, like I say, it's we're hoping to get into the Woods Hole Film Festival. And we're hoping to take it over to Martha's Vineyard.
Actually, I sent the link, and there is a link to a 10-minute trailer
piece,
on the Enquirer and Mirror's website, act.net, under the videos section.
Yeah.
There's a 10-minute trailer. I sent that over to Rick Carney over on the Vineyard,
Oh, good.
So he's aware of it now, and he hasn't reacted, but
Good.
I
These,
think it's-
we had that 10-minute. I've never tried this before, but the film's 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We made a 10-minute. I cut a 10-minute version to get out through the website of www.act.net, the newspaper's website, and to get out prior to the town meeting vote, just to give as a sort of an education. We had to pull. We had to leave the science in and pull most of the local stuff out. So
Right.
I actually enjoyed the 30-minute, the full film much better.
yeah,
but,
it is more complete.
Yes. Because the story is, when I was down in Annapolis, someone said to me, are you an environmentalist first or a filmmaker first? And I said, I'm a filmmaker, sort of, period.
Right.
It's I made a film called Wood Sails Dreams 3 years ago about sailing up and down between here and, say, Maine, and about wooden boat builders. And people will always ask me, did I want to go out in a sailboat? How about this sailboat? And how is this sailboat different? And I have no idea. I finally smartened up, and every time I go, I take a boat builder with me, and he answers those questions when we stand up. But, the same thing is here. The only thing I'm expert at really is putting the pictures on the cave wall. Everything else you have to go ask those guys.
Well, in this case, I think you asked the right questions.
No, I think that's important. I think, I've been doing this a long time, so the questions are you have to get the right ones. And generally, and I always tell people this when I interview them, generally it's just to get them talking. Everybody knows, everybody says, what should I study what should I look up before you come over? And I always go, nothing. We wouldn't be here if you weren't naturally an expert at this. And so it's always worked out pretty well.
What did you learn as you made the film? What things
Well-
were sort of surprises to you as you?
The eelgrass thing was a surprise. I guess the other things I knew about but forgot. The biggest thing I think that we have on this island is we have sort of a strange relationship with nature here. I mean, not strange, but
Strained sometimes.
right. Well, it's we all. Sometimes this place could be Newton,
Right.
Or Concord, or some nice place in Massachusetts that's not near the water.
Right.
We forget that we're an island sometimes, and seeing scallopers who go out into the wild and make their and got in the water every day and deal with nature to make their living, sort of reminded me of why we're here. We all kind of came here to get that. If we weren't born here, we all kind of came here for that connection.
Right.
Over the years we lose it as everything else gets in our way, daily life. But and that was kind of, I don't know if you'd call it surprising, but that was nice to see.
In a way, it reinforced a view that you may have had before.
Yeah, it's sort of a
which you
reminder.
hadn't thought about. Yeah. So what's next on your platter?
Well, see what we can do with this. And like I said, after it does the little film festival loop, or for in this case after Nantucket, because I don't need to wait for the other ones. We haven't even been accepted by them yet. So we want to get it out to as many people as possible here, and we're working with you and working with Cormac Collier to just to try to get a plan to get it in front of as many eyes as possible. And like what you and I were talking about the other day, I really think that the most powerful way to do this is to sit in a darkened room with your neighbors and watch this film on a big screen, and then talk about it immediately afterwards while some of those emotions are up. So hopefully we can do that a number of times, and then to see what it does. I've been thinking and talking to people about an oral history project, sort of specifically to tell the story of Scaldpin on Nantucket, but in a wider way that you can't do with a film. We interviewed a lot of people in it, but in a film it's kind of like writing a piece of music. You have to cut everything out that doesn't drive the film forward. So we'd like to tell a more complete story through a sort of oral history website.
How many additional minutes or hours of footage did you have for this?
We probably shot 50 to 1. 50 to an hour. It's a half hour, so maybe we shot 25 hours of footage. That's about right, I think. Sometimes it's more. because we were on the water a lot, the last film was probably about 100 to 1.
Right.
That's why it takes over the time, and then the biggest part is sort of deciding what you want and what you don't want. And 10 different directors will make 10 different films with the same footage, I always think. So it's trying to find out and tell the story you want to tell within all that footage. So this next part of the project, I sort of see this as the next part of the project, will allow us to use some of that footage to shoot some new footage, to archive all those for the future, and shoot them in a way that's really usable if you were going to come down 10 years from now and make a film, and to let people sort of keep being connected with their culture.
What about future projects for you? What do you have?
Oh, that's a good idea. I have notebooks filled with ideas, but I don't even like to talk about them until one of them gets so presents it. One of them sticks with me for so long that I just feel like I really have to do it. And or when a film's over, I sort of get bored and then wander around and try to find another story. And I've been lucky. They're there. You just got to bump into them. I guess that's a long way of saying I have no idea.
John, thank you so much. An excellent job on this film. I think when people see it, it will bring home to them the need for their participation in the process of preserving our harbor and our water quality. And thank you for the message that you've delivered.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.